Ladies and gentlemen, what happened in California yesterday should have Democrats across America reaching for the panic button. For decades, California has been treated as the crown jewel of Democrat political power. It has been the laboratory for progressive policies, the fundraising machine for the DNC, and the state they point to as proof that their vision for America works. We all know nothing works in California, but something happened yesterday that has Democrats sweating. Republicans showed life, they showed energy, and they showed that they are not willing to surrender to California without a fight. And suddenly, the political establishment that has controlled California for years is acting nervous.
About accountability, do you think Democrats will hold you accountable for standing by this principled neutrality by withholding your endorsement in this non-possible scenario where two Republicans take the ticket?
Yeah, look, my focus has been making sure that doesn't happen, and I've exercised not just a focus, but I've exercised through some action efforts to encourage that doesn't happen by making my case, and will continue to make my case. I do not see that scenario taking place. I've said this before, so I'll repeat it. I don't anticipate this need to be the case, but there is a break the glass scenario, and there's many people that have a deep understanding of what it would look like if Democrats were locked out, and we're going to do everything to make sure that doesn't happen.
Gavin Newsom basically mumbles through that whole speech. He knows that Democrats are in trouble, but he also knows, and he said that quiet part out loud, maybe in not the words that we know he was thinking, but he has a way to make sure Democrats win those elections. He will not come out and say it, but we all know, and it's certainly my opinion, that California will make sure that Democrat candidates get reelected or elected into major offices in that state, because Democrats have made millions and millions of dollars for themselves off the people of California, but they have done nothing for the people of California. And for years, Democrats have governed California virtually unchecked. They control the governor's office. They control the legislature. They control nearly every statewide office. Yet despite all that power, millions of Californians continue to flee the state. Businesses continue to relocate. Housing remains unaffordable. Crime and homelessness remain major concerns in many communities, and they are at an all-time high. And now voters are starting to ask a simple question. If Democrats had this much control for this long, why aren't things getting better? And yesterday's election results suddenly made California a little bit more red. But it sent a message, and that message was voters are willing to listen to alternatives instead of listening to the same old Democratic story. And that's exactly why Democrats are worried. But even an NBC News anchor basically said Democrats need to do something in the wee hours of the morning, or they are going to lose major races to Republicans.
You've gotten some real separation from Bianco. You've gotten some good numbers in these counties, but boy, you've seen Republicans, have pretty good election nights in California, only to have terrible days, weeks after in that vote by mail. So I think that's the question here. We do have some of that, as we said, some of that early vote is now in Los Angeles. This looks like it did with that vote by mail. It doesn't look like that gap between Becerra and Steyer has changed much here. Again, this is where Becerra represented. So there'd have to be either some change with that polling place vote, or it's just going to have to be such a flood of Democratic ballots coming in after, being tabulated after election night or into the wee hours this morning that would just lift both Democrats over Hilton. That's increasingly what it needs to be for Steyer.
So thousands of votes that will come in after the polls close, mail-in ballots, phone-in ballots. I don't even know how they do it in California. But that news anchor told us that Democrats need to do something when those thousands of votes come in after the polls close. They may be counting ballots into the wee hours of the morning, and it could take days, maybe even weeks, to decide who wins these major elections. But Gavin Newsom may be leaving office due to term limits, but nobody should underestimate his influence inside California politics. Newsom has spent years building one of the most powerful political networks in the country, a powerful network that has done nothing but destroy California and make it unaffordable to live. He understands political power isn't maintained by accident. It's maintained through organization, fundraising, and messaging. But his messaging has failed across the board. He promised to end homelessness. He promised to lower crime. He promised to make it more affordable for Californians to live an average life. And he has failed across the board. And now voters are dissatisfied. They've had enough of the Democrat political machine, and now the Democrats are running scared. So you can expect from now until the general elections a major fundraising effort by Democrats, because they know their political hold on power may be coming to an end. Because Californians need to know that there is another alternative to voting for the same old party election after election and seeing the same results, which is nothing gets done. It's all a campaign promise, but nothing happens in real life. But the real story is that Democrats appear worried about the possibility that the voters are going to kick them to the curb. Because again, for years, California has been an untouchable territory for Republicans. But yesterday showed that assumption may no longer be as secure as the political establishment would like to believe it is. And when politicians start getting nervous, voters pay attention. Because political power is never permanent. It only lasts as long as the voters allow it to, unless your state is run by someone like Gavin Newsom, who basically told us he'll do what he has to do to make sure Democrats win those races. But Californians are not that stupid. They're going to go to the polls in large numbers, and they're going to elect the people to represent their communities and their state that best service them. And to this day, and for years before today, Democrats have done nothing for California but make it unaffordable to live and unsafe to live, and people have had enough.